Professor Ruth is the best professor at RCC. According to Muzaffar Sharif's social judgment theory, immediately after processing this statement, you likely already made your own personal judgment as to whether this statement is true or false. Today, I'll be discussing social judgment theory. First, I'll briefly explain the theory, followed by it describing recent research findings, and finish with an explanation as to why this theory is irrelevant in today's society. Going back to my opening statement, Sharif would say we weigh every single new idea by comparing it to our own present point of view. Our point of view or attitude would fall under three different latitudes: acceptance, rejection, and non-commitment. If you fall under rejection, this statement would likely mean the least to you, as you already committed to a different stance. Perhaps you think every single teacher at RCC is great, or you already have a different favorite. Even if I were to sit here for an hour and discuss how great Professor Cliff is, I am unlikely to change your mind. If you have absolutely no opinion on the subject, you fall under latitude of non-commitment. I would have some success in persuading you to believe this statement if I gave you enough information. If you already think that Professor Cliff is a great professor, this statement would fall under latitude of acceptance. I would likely have the most success in persuading you to believe this statement is true, as you already somewhat agree with the statement. Another important aspect is ego involvement. The more involved you are in your attitude, the less your judgment process is likely to change. This is the basis of social judgment theory and how we process judgments in our everyday lives. As for recent research, for today's video, I will discuss 3 studies conducted to further analyze social judgment theory. First is a study conducted among preschoolers, followed by one centered around social media, and lastly, a politically involved study. Social judgment theory can be seen among all different aspects of our lives, and according to Daniel Hahn and others in journal PLOS ONE, an article published on January 4th, 2016, titled Social Preference in Preschoolers, Effects of Morphological and Self-Similarity and Familiarity. Preschoolers at age 5 have already established means of how they process social judgment. This study specifically sought to analyze how children judge strangers in comparison to those who are similar to themselves. Hahn and his peers argued children would show preference towards similarity over uncertainty. Study participants were shown 3 different images. One was a self-morph image resembling each participant individually almost exactly. Next was a familiar morph mixing the participant and a stranger 50-50. And lastly, they were shown a stranger's morph with no similarity. There was a strong preference among children for their self-morphs and familiar morphs over stranger morphs. This is important because of how results were similar across all children and seems to indicate that even at the young age of 5, children have already established social means as to how they pass judgment and their attitudes. Continuing to a growing aspect of our social lives, the next study discusses social media and how social judgment impacts how we perceive others in different scenarios. An experimental test of how selfies change social judgments on Facebook, written by Samuel Taylor and his colleagues, was published on October 1st, 2017 in Cyber Psychology, which studied how selfies impact social media stranger judgments. In this study, participants were shown Facebook status updates both with and without selfies. Findings indicate something as simple as a selfie alters interpretations of message appropriateness, perceived narcissism, and social attractiveness. Participants considered posters who included selfies in their post as narcissists, self-focused, and attention seekers. Additionally, they regarded them as less attractive, and the messages with selfies were considered to be less appropriate when compared to posts without selfies. Lastly, we have a study published in Political Psychology on February 1st, 2017. Consequences of politicians' disrespectful communication depend on social judgment, dimensions, and voters' moral identity by Maria Palladino, and others, which argued disrespect in politicians' communication turned out to be a relevant factor in for participant decision-making independent of party identification. Palladino's study had participants express their attitude and their likelihood to vote in favor of politicians after reading disrespectful comments made by politicians. The study concluded politicians damage themselves on an interpersonal level with voters by communicating disrespectfully and thereby cause a decrease in voting intention and decision making. So why is this all relevant in our daily lives? Well, we've discussed social judgment in varying different fields, from children to social media and politics. What we communicate both verbally and non-verbally has an impact on how others perceive us. In children, there was a clear distinction between similarity and uncertainty for 5-year-olds. Taylor's social media research indicated that strangers make social judgment with absolutely no context needed. And as political issues become more important in society, it's important to understand how messages can be sent to voters simply by how politicians interact with competitors. And that's just 3 examples. Following this theory, further research can be concluded to understand other aspects of our beliefs and interactions with others. Like, why is fake news so prevalent and widely accepted, and how we can become more aware when we make these snap decisions we don't even realize we're making on a daily basis. As you can see, social judgment theory is absolutely everywhere. We discussed how every judgment falls under 3 different latitudes: acceptance, rejection, and non-commitment. How commonly this theory is seen in our lives from childhood to social media all the way to politics. So think back to my first statement. What judgment did you make and what caused you to think this way?